So about the panel discussion, we have first and foremost our representative from East Turkestan, Mr. Salih Hudayar, the Honorable Prime Minister of the East Turkestan Govt-in-Exile. He is also the leader of the East Turkestan National Awakening Movement and is based in the US. Our representative from Hong Kong is Mr. Choi, a qualified lawyer from Hong Kong. He has been one of the conveners of the Progressive Lawyers Group, which has been at the forefront in Hong Kong's struggle to preserve its values of democracy, freedom, rule of law, and independence of judiciary from the onslaught of China. Our representative for Tibet is Ms. Tashi Choedon, a researcher with the Tibet Policy Institute based in India. Her research areas are Tibetan diaspora and gender studies, with a special focus on Tibetan women inside Tibet. For moderating this session, we have Ms. Namrata Hasija, who is a research associate with Center for China Analysis and Strategy. She is also the president of Taiwan Alumni Association of India and specializes in Chinese foreign policy and India-Taiwan relations. Over to you, Namrata.
Thank you, Amok, and I would like to thank the Center for Advanced Studies, Pune and Lokmanya for organizing this very well-timed seminar, especially having representatives from Tibet, Hong Kong, and Xinjiang to enlighten us on the ground realities that are there. And I think after Mr. Ranaday's introduction, there's very much there's nothing left for me to kind of give an introduction to what we are going to speak today. But yes, with the recent, as Mr. Ranaday pointed out, with the recent policies, especially the way the Chinese Communist Party came up with the national security law, which was, I think, definitely coming because since last year we have been seeing a lot of protest happening in Hong Kong and also Tibet. They have systematically how the Chinese Communist Party, if I could use the words that His Holiness Dalai Lama used, that a cultural genocide has been happening in Tibet for over the years, where the Chinese Communist Party has kind of made sure that they are able to dilute, and they have specially targeted the monks and nuns, Tibetan monks and nuns, to kind of impact their culture and the diversity that the Tibetans had. And lastly, Xinjiang, of course, we have seen over the years how the Chinese Communist Party has, come up with different policies that have not only, like especially where a party, like in Tibet, there's a cadre party member to overlook, overlook the whole village. But in Xinjiang, the cadre is actually supposed to stay in your house. So he shares your house. He's there 24/7. So you are under surveillance 24/7. So that kind of, surveillance is there in Xinjiang. So I think I will not take much time, and I would start, with the speakers who are the eminent speakers here, who will kind of throw more light and especially what is happening on ground. And I would start with the Honorable Prime Minister Salih Hudayar, who is representing East Turkestan. So my first question to you would be that CCP's portrayal of being a multi-ethnic society on one hand, and but the way it has tried to repress religious and ethnic diversity in Tibet and Xinjiang, could you please highlight how CCP has systematically used policies for this repression, and to what extent in Xinjiang?
Yes, firstly, thank you for giving me this opportunity to present this issue. I want to thank Lokmanya and the CAS of India for allowing this. So what China has been using, or the Chinese Communist Party has been doing for the past 7 decades, really, is by promoting so-called ethnic unity. It's actually promoting Han Chinese domination. As we saw in Tibet, Tibetan culture, language, and identity has been largely eroded. This is something that they've been doing in East Turkestan as well. They eroded our language, our culture, and now they're engaging in a genocide where they're locking up over 3 million of our people in concentration camps, prisons, and labor camps, destroying our mosques, even taking away 500,000 of our children to send them to state-run orphanages and boarding schools to ensure that they become, quote, loyal Chinese citizens, end quote. The Chinese Communist Party's end goal is to create a state, or a Chinese state, or a China that is dominated purely by the Han Chinese, where there is no difference in ethnicity, religion, or culture.
Right. Mr. Craig, my first question to you would be that if you could throw some light on the national security law and its extraterritorial clause, because what intrigues everyone is how China can, how far-reaching this extraterritorial clause can be, and also how far-reaching can it, it actually be. What can China really, how it can implement this when it comes to people who have already, escaped to different countries? If you could throw some light on this aspect.
Right. The national security law actually promulgated by the Chinese government and Hong Kong government and on the 30th of June, year 2020. Before they promulgated this law, and actually no one in Hong Kong has actually read the law before. So everybody was actually caught on shock by the how wide these national security law can be. And under the law, there are 4 offenses. The first one is cessation, and then subversion, terrorist activities, and collusion with a foreign country or with external elements to endanger national security. The problems with this law is that the Hong Kong Bar Association, in its statements on 1st of July, year 2020, they actually make some comments about these offenses under the law. For example, like the cessation, they actually said that this gives rise to concern whether this might operate or prohibit mere speech or any peaceful advocacy, because cessation under the law can be committed with or without violence. And as to the subversion, the Bar Association also made a comment saying that they have the concern whether the media criticism or nitpicking might be caught under this provision. For the terrorist activities, the Bar Association also makes a comment saying that whether the prosecution must prove that the accused knew that the person receiving such services is a terrorist. And for the collusion with a foreign country or with external elements to endanger national security law, and the Bar Association also raised the concern that whether certain existing activities or academics, NGOs or media organizations which were lawful before or not unlawful before then might be outlawed by this provision. And the reason why the national security law is so controversial is that we can actually hear from some international leaders' responses to it. For example, for the UK Foreign Minister, Mr. Dominic Raab, and he made the comment saying that it is a clear and serious violation of the UK-China Joint Declaration, and with this, a violation of the China's freely assumed international obligations under the Joint Declaration. And the US also, because in response to the national security law, take away the Hong Kong special status under the Hong Kong-US Policy Act. And another thing that's raised a lot of concern is by the human rights lawyers is that the national security law overrides the basic laws of Hong Kong, the local domestic laws, and the international human rights law, for example, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And so, which means that the national security law will prevail in the event that any inconsistency with the local laws of Hong Kong. So the Bill of Rights ordinance in Hong Kong will also be undermined. So as to how far-reaching it can be, and under the law, actually is saying that not only it will apply to Hong Kong residents, it also applies to companies incorporated in Hong Kong. That will include subsidiaries or any company of a foreign corporation incorporated in Hong Kong. In another article of the national security law, it also states that this law will apply to any person who is not permanent resident of Hong Kong as well. So we can, after the passage of this national security law, we have heard that 2 US citizens been wanted by the Hong Kong police because of the national security law. So we can see that these national security laws not only applying to the residents of Hong Kong, but also to other citizens who are not within the territory of Hong Kong or China. Thank you.
Okay. So my next question would again be to Honorable Prime Minister. How do you see in the future that Uyghurs in Xinjiang and also outside Xinjiang, how they can form a movement that could take shape of an international united front to fight against this repression that we just spoke about in Xinjiang? And do you see that the world and especially the Islamic countries supporting such a movement?
So, as far as the first question, we already have an international movement that has started, especially in the past few years, to highlight the cause, the East Turkestan cause, and the situation in East Turkestan. 2 years ago, not many people in the world knew about East Turkestan and the Uyghurs. However, with an intense information campaign being carried out across the world by our community, we've managed to inform the world about East Turkestan and the Uyghurs. And we hope that this will only, get better further, in countries like India and other countries across the Muslim world as well. However, the question to, are there any Muslim countries supporting this? Unfortunately, to be real, there is no Muslim country supporting this. Turkey might appear to be, supporting our cause historically, because Turkey is our brother. It's a Turkic nation, and that's where most of our people have fled to outside of Central Asia. However, in recent years, Turkey has been increasingly close with China. They've engaged in multi-billion-dollar deals and have remained silent on our plight. And in some cases, they've even deported Uyghurs from Turkey back to China. And this is something that happened in 2019, where an Uyghur woman and 2 of her children were sent back, and she was subsequently sent to a concentration camp. In other Muslim countries, due to their economic ties with China, they are remaining silent. But however, as our Prime Minister of the First East Turkestan Republic stated back in 1933, there will be no help for us from the Muslim world. This is a reality that we must accept, and this is about almost 100 years ago we said this. So we must turn to other powers, to the great powers like India, to European powers, and ask them for support.
Thank you. Then I'll again come back to Mr. Craig. The companies, the international companies also, come under this law. Now, Hong Kong, as we all know, has always had this very flourishing economy. And whenever I talk to Mr. Rana Day, who was posted there in Hong Kong, the way he tells me about Hong Kong, when I went there in 2018, it was definitely not the same. But I'm sure if we visit now after the national security law, it will definitely be far away from the way we all imagined Hong Kong and we expected Hong Kong to be. Now, what impact do you think, especially this national security law, is going to have on the flourishing economy of Hong Kong? Now, also we see that, especially they have said that you can buy only from the yellow shops, and all these clauses are there. And also, what impact will international companies who are operating in Hong Kong, how this law will kind of, have, just, please tell us a picture about the overall economy of Hong Kong, how it will impact that.
We'll talk about the local domestic economy first, and then I will move on to some international companies, how it will be affected by this national security law. During the past year, in Hong Kong, protesters and supporters of the democracy, they formed this yellow economic circle in support of the democracy and freedom in Hong Kong. And after the passage of this national security law, we can see that a lot of these restaurants or supporters, they're actually withdrawing from this yellow economic circle because they are afraid that pointing out support to democracy or freedom in Hong Kong will be violation of the law. The thing is that there is a chilling effect. The chilling effect is so strong that people are so afraid that these restaurants are already taken down their decorations that are supporting the democracy. And apart from that, right before the passage of the national security law, we can see that there's some CCP media or individuals, they're asking why some big banks not expressing support of the national security law. And after they criticizing these financial institutions not pointing out, we can actually see the HSBC Standard Charter that some of these leaders came out to the media and say that they support the national security law. We can see that the companies in Hong Kong, they no longer have the right to be silent. They have to go out and to support some political agenda by the government. And apart from that, the American Chambers of Commerce between 6th of July and 9th of July, they have a survey and in response to this national security law. And 76% in total of them expressed concern of this new national security law, and 41% of them were extremely concerned. And they are also saying that some of them are actually considering to moving out of Hong Kong to other places to have their offices. And we can actually see that, for example, like New York Times, they lose a lot of staff outside Hong Kong, and then we also see that some big giant technology company, for example, like Google and Facebook, they refuse to comply with the data access request by the government. And so we can actually see that the confidence of Hong Kong's among these international companies is actually shaken. And they are actually still assessing the impact of this national security law. And because of the national security law itself is quite vaguely defined. For example, under the Article 29 is about the collusion with a foreign country or with external elements to endanger national security law. There's a provision saying that if any person who steals, spies, obtains repayment, or unlawfully provides state secrets for a foreign country or an institution or organization or individual, it will be a violation of the law of the national security law. And the prominent lawyer and prominent law firm Allen Overy, they have there is an article written about understanding the China's state secrets law, and in that article, it actually talks about how wide and how broad these state secrets can be, and actually may include also some foreign companies passively accepting information in circumstances where they're in the position to be told favors or extra influence. So it can be very wide, and the other companies in Hong Kong or other foreign companies in Hong Kong should pay attention and should have more procedures or internal policies in order to comply with these national security law. So I would say that the national security law, we are still assessing the impacts of that, and we still need to see that how the foreign companies to live with it under this law. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There is a question for Honorable PM East Turkestan. So the question is, radical Islamic nations such as Pakistan don't bother to take a stand against the human rights violations of the Uyghur Muslims, clearly for their political benefits. How important is it to gain support of these nations? Are they even expecting any change in coming future regarding the stand of these nations?
Honestly, historically, over the past 70 years, Pakistan has been very close with China. Many Muslim nations actually have been very close with China. They have not offered any type of support, any type of even solidarity in any way. In fact, most Muslim countries have sided with China, even praising China at the UN for the human rights atrocities and other crimes that it's committing against Uyghur and other Muslims in East Turkestan. And ideally, we would want this to change, but realistically, looking at the big picture, I don't think Pakistan's position will change anytime in the near future. I'm even looking at, the position of many Muslim countries. Many of them, I don't think will change their position either. So, like I said before, even 100 years ago, when we first declared independence, our prime minister at that time, he recognized that we were not going to get any support from Muslim countries. Over the past 90 years, we haven't gotten any type of support or recognition from Muslim majority countries at all. In fact, it's been mostly Western countries that have opened their doors. In fact, when we fled, post 1949, when Communist China invaded and occupied East Turkestan, our people fled to India because we have a long history of cultural and economic exchange with India, and India was the first country to really open its doors and arms to us. Whereas in Pakistan, if you try to flee there, they'll either shoot you at the border or they'll capture you and sell you back to the Chinese.
Thank you. There's another question for Mr. Craig. Someone has posed a question. Didn't the people of Hong Kong realize in 1999 that China will ensure that Hong Kong be brought under Beijing totally in a few years and not wait for 50 years as promised?
I think at that time when Hong Kong was handed back to China in 1997, everybody still had this hope that the one country, two system will work, and people still hope that the life will be the same like before 1997. And that's why I think most people were still optimistic at that time and still believe that, maybe we can still live on our own lives and we still have lots of the protection. In fact, before the handover of Hong Kong, the British government passed a lot of these human rights related legislation in Hong Kong. For example, the privacy law and anti-discrimination laws in Hong Kong, and also the Bills of Rights in Hong Kong. They also try to protect Hong Kong human rights by other international treaties like the ICCPR, and so that Hong Kong human rights will be maintained after 1997. Unfortunately, of course, is that even though China has tried to promise that Hong Kong will have the 50 years change of our life, but it seems that it doesn't really come into realization after some years, at least at this moment. UK is of the view that this is a serious violation of the joint declaration.
Okay. I have two more questions from Honorable Prime Minister Saleh. So there is this question which says that the selfish nature of CCP is also displayed on rewriting of Uyghur history, calling them as settlers in East Turkestan, completely disregarding them as an indigenous population, as stated in CCP's white papers. So would you say, what would you say about that?
This is complete lies. If you look at the recent excavations of mummies and other historical artifacts in East Turkestan, you see that Uyghurs have had a presence in East Turkestan for thousands of years. In fact, according to our renowned Uyghur historian Choedon Almas, we have a history of well over 6,000 years within East Turkestan.
Okay. There is another question. The ethno-discrimination against the Uyghurs speak volumes regarding the oppression. CCP contradicts its unified multi-ethnic society claims. So do you think this othering of Uyghurs is driven by Han nationalism? Support of these nations? Are they even expecting any change in coming future regarding the stand of these nations?
So our dream to regain our independence is something that has pre-existed, since 1884, when the Manchu Qing dynasty invaded and occupied East Turkestan. East Turkestan was renamed to Xinjiang, meaning the new territory. in the 1920s, inspired by the Indian national movement, national independence movement. Many of our students were actually studying there. In fact, our first Prime Minister of the East Turkestan Republic, he was actually in India when rebellion broke out in East Turkestan. Our goal, is to regain and restore our independence. This is something that was driven not just by, the present Chinese regime, but by previous Chinese regimes who were engaging in colonialism and mass atrocities, which have, continued to this day, even though they claim to be different administrations. The KMT tried to invade and occupy East Turkestan, and we fought, against them. We declared independence briefly in 1933, but was crushed due to Soviet intervention. We declared independence again in 1944, and in 1949, again due to Stalin's intervention and support of Mao, East Turkestan was invaded and occupied by China. Our people have never given up our struggle to regain our independence, and the very fact that we want to get independence is why China is locking up millions of people in concentration camps. In fact, it's one of their top national defense goals in their latest national defense strategy is to prevent, the creation of East Turkestan and, to prevent the independence of Tibet.
Thank you. There's another question for Mr. Craig. The question is, given that China has defied and flouted international laws and conventions, be it the South China Sea and other issues, what are the other options the rest of the world has to ensure that it, complies with the international norms and rules?
I think this is a very interesting question because we can see that a lot of freedom-loving countries, they are trying to work together and to make sure that China is in compliance with this international treaty. For example, the Five Eyes together, and they have issued very strong statements about what China has been doing to Hong Kong. And I think that freedom-loving countries, for example, India and Japan, and they should also join together to form a stronger voice to tell that we actually stand by freedom and human rights and democracy, to show that democracy and human rights is nothing endangering a nation. Actually, it will flourish nations like other countries like US and like a European country as well. So I think the most important now is that these countries to stand together and then voice out their opinion and then tell China that actually these human rights core values and universal values are actually benefiting the Chinese community and the Chinese people as well.
Thank you. So there's one general question. It is not directed to any of the speakers. So I think any of the speakers or even Mr. Ranade can take this question. The question is, can the scuttling of the Belt and Road Initiative bring China to its knees and drastically reduce its so-called influence in the global affairs?
I would like to answer this.
Yes, please.
Yes, stopping the Belt and Road Initiative is actually should be a priority for all countries that promote democracy and that care about freedom and human rights. The Belt and Road Initiative is China's tool to achieve its Chinese dream of becoming, the world's most powerful economic, political, and military power. It's actually a conduit for neo-colonialism and the spread of totalitarianist ideas across the world. It's not just about trade. This is China expanding its influence beyond its borders, all the way across the world. Therefore, it's crucial that governments across the world, organizations, and individuals push back against this, because originally, this is how China invaded and occupied East Turkestan. They promised us, we're going to help you develop your country, we're going to help you build roads, we're going to help you do this, we're going to help you do that. The same promises that they're giving to Central Asian countries, the same promises that they're giving to Pakistan and to many countries across the world. And then initially, they'll build a few roads, but then they start bringing Chinese settlers, Chinese workers, and then these Chinese workers and these settlers start to, intermarry, sometimes coercively into the population, and undermine the political, economic, and social system of that country. And then ultimately, in the long run, what they will engage in is colonialism and replace, the original population to where they'll either put in weak-minded leaders of your own people to serve as puppets, while they send in, their Communist Party officials to, quote, guide you to the right path, and you'll be stuck in a situation where we are facing in East Turkestan and Tibet today, where millions of your people will be locked up in concentration camps, and your culture, your identity will be completely eroded. So it's my opinion that the international community opposes the Belt and Road Initiative, and by doing that, they can ensure the independence of East Turkestan, Tibet, and ensure that the Communist Party is not able to become this monster, which it already is, but not to where it will threaten the very existence of the global community.
Hi, Tashi. So my first question to you is that we all know that Chinese Communist Party, they have all written religious institutions as breeding grounds for dissent, and they have retaliated with greater restrictions and control. And one such policy is patriotic re-education, especially for the monks and nuns. Can you throw some light on this, aspect, especially how their policies have kind of restricted the religious activities in Tibet?
Okay. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to represent Tibet. Since Xi Jinping assumed leadership in 2012, he has introduced a series of religious policies, in which he has especially emphasized on the, Sinicization of religions in China and in its occupied countries like Tibet and East Turkestan. So the Sinicization of religions in China and occupied countries basically, talks about how religions in China and the minority religions to be incorporated into a larger Chinese state discourse. That is, they have the state has also implemented, sub activities like imposition of, many rules and regulations in nunneries and monasteries across Tibet. So one of them is implementation of four standards. The four standards, it's the rules. It's rules that focuses on nuns and monks to be politically reliable citizens. To speak to for they the nuns and monks are to be politically reliable citizens to help maintain so-called stability in Tibet. So they are also given titles such as Mormon monks and nuns, to mainly to influence the Tibetan lay masters and other monastic religious subjects. So yeah. So in another instances of the implementation of state's religious policy can be seen in Hudayar and Yachingar, two of the most important Buddhist academy in Eastern Tibet. So these two academics have come under constant strict scrutiny since 2001, when Chen Zemin was the president of the of China. So in recent years, starting from 2016, they have evicted many monks and nuns, in Yachingal and Harungar, and they have also demolished many of their quarters. So why Yachingal and Harungar becomes very important because right after Cultural Revolution, their founders, Yachingers and Harungers, founded the Buddhist academics. Founders have established this solely to revive the lost Tibetan Buddhist culture. So, in that way, so many Tibetan nuns and monks across Tibet, including all three provinces of Tibet, have come to study and to really pursue their monastic education. But the Chinese state's increasing intrusion into you know these spaces, monastic spaces, have really undermined the important religious values and ethos and principles of Tibetan Buddhism. So these are the how they have implemented this religious policy in China, in Tibet.
Thank you, Tashi.
Yeah.
Next question to you is that when the reincarnation process of His Holiness the Dalai Lama is taking place, what role do you think the Tibetan diaspora is going to play in this with the time when this process is taking place? And when I say Tibetan diaspora, I don't mean only in India, but the large Tibetan diaspora that is present around the world.
So in 2011, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama devolved his political authority to the democratically elected president of Tibetan Govt-in-Exile, the CCAS and Tibetan administration, he has done this with a vision that in future Tibetan youth will take charge of the Tibetan movement. So, although there is an increasing interference of the Chinese state in the reincarnation process, so there has been a lot of an increasing interference by the Chinese state into this whole reincarnation process. But the Tibetan diaspora, the Tibetan diaspora, especially Tibetan youth, have become very politically conscious in recent years, and they are really taking charge of the movement. So and Dalai Lama has also devolved his political authority with a vision really to to make Tibetan youth to lead all the Tibetan movement. So the Tibetan diaspora also plays very important role, as there are very many emerging Tibetan youth leaders who are taking charge of the Tibetan movement.